Sarah Kernion, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's really great to have you. I saw you pop up on Tom Woods' show, and I'm kind of in that libertarian circle, and so this the plea that I saw you put out. I think you're trying to reach Rogan and some other folks to get eyeballs on your message, and I watched some of your stuff, and I'm really taken by the whole thing, and so I wanted to give you an opportunity on my show. It's much smaller than Rogan's show, a little bit. But I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of tell your story. Just want to open the floor to you. It's people who aren't aware of you and your situation with your kids. I would love to just let you just kind of tell your story.
Well, thanks for having me. I believe in the power of these kind of networks to really support one-on-one connection and then getting this to the masses. So thanks me for opening this up to me. I am the person that you would have thought, for all intents and purposes, had whatever the fairy tale life was looking like to be. Wonderful home growing up, wonderful college experience, wonderful first time job, checking off all the boxes. So to be 42 and have three children, also divorced, and two of my children having non speaking autism, that was not on my bingo card. And it wasn't for a very long time. And when reality hits you like that, for as conscious of a uh, mindful liver of life as I am and have always been and was raised to be, it drastically changed, as you can imagine, the trajectory of my life. And in being so vulnerable and sharing as just like a mommy blogger, decade and a half ago with my oldest, I realized that there was a lack of a platform for women and caregivers in my shoes. And in having not one but two children with non-speaking autism and also a girl and a boy, I I know that I'm not unique in a lot of ways. I know that there's absolutely other women and caregivers that have similar situations, and I also know that there are very few speaking as loudly about the realities as I am. So about, I guess, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, began speaking my journey into life, going into companies, talking about really the powers of neurodiversity. As someone with ADHD, I realized that I do have traits that can be used as a competitive advantage to companies and how I see the world. And yet I also know the debilitating, life-altering isolation that comes when you have children with profound autism and neurodiversity. And once, to be completely honest, once RFK illuminated the reality of families like mine with my children in mid-April, I realized it was an inflection point in my mission for not only celebrating my children for who they are, but to stop sugarcoating the realities of my day to day, and that I know that I'm not unique in that. And
Sorry, real quick. What do you mean by sugarcoating exactly? I don't want to go past that.
yeah, I think that as someone who I believe that we are lucky to age. I feel like we are. I'm someone who is very conscious about life and my choices and staying educated and exposing myself to the world. And at the same time, when you have children who are so vastly developmentally delayed and don't fit any sort of typical norm, you look for the silver linings. And I believe sometimes those silver linings, which I 1000% believe in because it helps elevate my day to day, can sometimes be seen as sugarcoating the belly and the meat and potatoes of the reality of my life. And that's what I mean by sugarcoating, is that at some point that starts to crack a little bit because it's not as sugary sweet as those small little inchstone moments are.
Yeah, I get it. And so I guess my question would be this internal versus external sugarcoating. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I sort of am envisioning this as you're trying to find the silver linings in your day to day because you have to keep going through the struggle, right? But that can pathologize potentially when you're projecting that externally, and then maybe that's all that the external world sees. You might be posting stuff like, "Oh, this thing happened, and this was so great," and whereas the day to day is very much different. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. Am I on track or am I off?
It's both. I'd say that the reception to the projection of the making the day and keep moving and get out there and to accept the life that you have and been given. I fully believe that life happens for us, not to us, right? Like this is there is some sort of recipe that's happening here. And when you realize that what you're putting out is only part of the brand that you actually deeply are living, it does create that inflection point. It cracks, right? Things start to crack, and you think, "Wait, I'm not sharing nearly enough. I guess I'm not saying and using this platform enough to say, whoa, 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 I just want to remind everyone that like my child will wake up with fecal matter under their fingernails a few times a week. Like, oh, we can't say that. Oh, that's part of the sensory seeking behaviors that I talk about. Now, I've probably hinted at that through the years, but over time that does compound. And I never wanted to come across as someone who was like this, um, you know, Tom Ford lipstick model trying to sell profound autism like as a superpower. And so that is really, yeah, I mean, it was not conscious projection. I think it was a total reorientation to what I actually was trying to share.
Got it, got it. And I think you've probably learned, I'm suspecting anyway, that when you are vulnerable about the things that are not the sugarcoat, that are not the silver linings, I think that opens the door for connection with other people who are going through similar situations. Am I correct?
For sure. I mean, and it's hard to not let them sit very parallel because there's a lot of autism parents in my boat in my same shoes that do share their lives because they want to say like, look, like see them, understand them. That only goes so far into saying a village wants to really see
Mm.
what this is, right? Um, so there's a sense of community, like anything, or any sort of individual going through anything can find their people if they're vulnerable enough to say what they're going through. This definitely feels different in that we have been pushed so far to the idea that there's enough to be happy about that we should just shut up and just be happy that our kids are in our homes, they're not institutionalized, they're fighting the good fight, they're alive and well, and they're taking in calories, and there's a lot of that that's fed back by the village, and no one is in here in the walls of the homes like mine. And so that's, yeah, it's both community creating and also deafening at the same time because you realize how few are actually saying what the realities are.
Yeah, sure. It takes guts to do that, I think, especially on social media where people are so brutal. And I think also there's probably an element of misunderstanding about autism, particularly nonverbal, non speaking autism, severe versus the quote unquote neurodivergent, which seems to be almost kitschy and cool nowadays. And I
The
think,
TikTok version.
yeah, the TikTok version, I think that is a thing that maybe drives misunderstanding. And I could see. A lot of ways you could go sideways on social media, opening yourself up in your current situation.
Yeah, I mean, I speak at companies about the powers of neurodiversity. I really believe I come from a family of neurodivergent individuals. Obviously, that wasn't what we knew what it was called, or it doesn't even really need a label. I don't think I need a neurodivergent label, but I do believe people have wiring that sees the world differently. We do. And when I became a little bit more open and honest about the differences of what profound autism versus maybe high functioning, low support needs, quirky TikToker who talks about his sensory issues to light, that's not my child who's biting metal at a playground and is sensory seeking, and I have to worry about lead lead paint or something, right? That's just it's a different autism. Um, so yeah, it's a wild world out there, and I think that the divide is something that needs to be recognized.
Yeah, I think that's clearly true, and I'm glad that you're getting this platform to explain that because I haven't seen a lot of it out there. Like I said, I've seen the primary focus has been on that more traditional. Maybe you have Asperger's, maybe you're high functioning. The Love on the Spectrum show, like that is
Exactly.
popularized, and I think that is what people think when they deal with autism. And so I think I told you I'm in tech, and so one of the things that we did was went to a company called what were they called? People Shores in California, in Silicon Valley, and they hired people who had been. Are you familiar with the company?
I've done a lot of my own personal research on, like, I mean, Silicon Valley does proactively recruit for neurodivergent individuals.
Right, but this was a different thing. These
Hmm.
were the folks that were at Google, were at NASA, were at these Silicon Valley companies and couldn't hang because they were so autistic that they couldn't function in that corporate environment. And so what
Yeah,
they did is this company pulled these folks together and did a lot of back office work and coding and sort of managed their severe autism, and sort of had them be in the workforce, which I thought was a really cool model.
that's really cool. Yeah.
And so I completely agree. This can totally be a superpower in a lot of cases, and this is what people think of oftentimes when they hear autism. But like I said, I feel like there's this big bright line between what you're dealing with and what the rest of that group is.
Yeah, and again, I know that I sit in this very sweet. I like it. It's a sweet spot, right? Like, I come from a family. You know, my brother is like a savant, right? He's like the Harvard educated philosopher, works in AI now. I mean, he is ridiculously cerebral and intelligent, right? And that is because my parents allowed for him to explore and learn in ways that just benefited him. That is not the same thing as what it takes to raise and honestly keep alive my children. And I think in recognizing that, and then recognizing being a mother who is so, any mother, I really think primally has a wiring to understanding the gut, like their mother's intuition is so strong to, like, something's different here. This is not the same. And what it takes to raise and keep alive and to potentially grow children who are at such deficiencies, whether it's, epigenetically or just basic, genome, we have got to start like dividing this and paying attention to it. Um, I mean, again, I know that you saw me on the Tom Woods show. I absolutely love his phrase of, it's the index card of approved opinion.
Allowable opinions, yes.
Opinions, sorry, yeah, allowable opinions. It is resonant right now in the special needs community, because people are telling me, this is too much. The world's not, we can't handle this. This is, people can't handle, they don't know what to do with it, with your reality. Cool. Great. That's awesome. Maybe
Well,
ask a question about it. Maybe delve a little bit into, like, well, what does your day look like? I've not had that.
Well, also, it feels like this topic is a little bit nuclear right now. Like to ask a question, like I was concerned, like putting this on YouTube. Like, am I going to get my channel banned because we talk about something that is outside that allowable opinion window, right? And so it's a very weird thing, and it has to feel a little bit upsetting being in your shoes where there's obviously this increase, and we're seeing
Yeah.
autism rates skyrocket, and we're not even allowed to ask certain questions. And so it's the whole, and I feel like even people that aren't in the community, everyone is just kind of like, they've got this sort of like bubble of things that they're just not allowed to talk about. And it just kind of goes on in the future. We're not asking any important questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's so complex, it's so multi-layered. I I do believe that everyone, if they're being honest with the truth of what their lives look like, right? And they can, like, write it out. If you write out what your day is, like, from factual, like, I got up, like the alarm went off at this, and you can tell what your day is. I think if someone lived my reality and truth for 30 days, they would go, whoa, like, that is not what I signed up for in being a parent. And I think that even just telling someone that, you get a lot of, "Well, I mean, I can, well, of course, I mean, but that's not gonna happen." And you're like, "Right, that isn't gonna happen." That's the reality too, is that it's not gonna happen. So, believing people, I think that that's one of the biggest things, is, like, believe the mothers and caregivers. Just believe us. I'm telling you, there's no reason for me to make this stuff up. I don't think there's any reason to remind people that I'm buying pull-ups in bulk for my 10 and 7-year-old. That's not, why would I, there's no reason why a mother would share that. And I think that the extreme of what you were saying on especially on social media and online, there have been some mothers in similar situations who have gone on to say, this is why I'm not at church. on Sunday. This is why I have to stay at home while my son is at his full-time ABA school, because when he gets home, this is the reality. And what I've taken in as the reaction is people saying you're exploiting your children, you're not taking into account their own ability to share their story. And at some point that has to be like really, really zoned in on to say they can't every behavior is communication for children that can't speak, right? Like even for you and I mean, the way in which the medium is the message, right? Like the ability to do this, to show up, to orchestrate, to reply and just live. Their only way of doing that is through behaviors that are non-speaking. So if the parent is their voice to show what they are like, and they're obviously in pain or struggling or deep confusion or angst, showing that should not produce a response of like you're exploiting them. But
Mm.
that's the catch 22 here, is that I mean, I get that a lot. I got my first death threat too, which is also a really fun thing to talk about.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, people are really angry.
About what? Like, why would you even get a death threat? Like, I'm trying to think through the list of things that
Ready?
might
I'll
produce
tell you.
that.
This will be great. Because you'll go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It went like this. You are going to be the reason why children are institutionalized again. You are, you should go kill yourself and remind yourself that people like you are why eugenics exists. And your
Whoa.
child, I mean, I can pull it up, the whole thing. I mean, but that's the truth. And that's not just one. I mean, that was one very direct one. I mean, that is a very common reply to when I share, can we stay curious to maybe the possibility that there's some epigenetics going on here in that environment and medium, and what we've been maybe just living in at all is maybe a possibility. And if it's not, that's fine, but maybe explore it. You would not believe what people consider saying to me.
Well, I probably would. We lived through the COVID
Yes,
pandemic, and
you are.
I saw the way people were insanely cruel to each other on both sides. So I actually do believe it.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the reason why. So I'm the reason for the institutionalization. Just
Oof, man. Well, I wanted to sort of circle back to the beginning because I'm thinking through this, and in the sort of context of my kids, and I'm wondering like when you first became aware that
mm-hmm.
something was not right. What did that arc look like from first hint of something not okay to having a diagnosis?
Great question. So I do believe that there's a couple buckets of um, how others would answer for this too. So I want to make clear that my experience with this from profound autism, I do believe has multiple different um, paths of experience to get a similar diagnosis. Mine was around, so I have a typical developing 12-and-a-half-year-old daughter. And for all intents and purposes, I had the kid that you just told not to touch the stove and she didn't touch the stove, right? It was like, oh, I should write a book on mothering. This is like who are these people that need to, like create boundaries? Like, I don't need to, I just tell her no and she doesn't do it. And so I was very aware that when I found out I was having a second daughter, that I would, not compare her development and lean into the fact that she's not coming into a family of just a mother and a father. She's coming to a family with a sister, all those things, right? And just lean into that. And so I did not really place much emphasis on her like macro development that first year. There was a telltale sign in hindsight. She was unable to breastfeed, and I was like, I'm just all for it. Like, it worked really well with my first, and I was like, this is great. We're on the go. This is how I'm going to do it. And so her lack of being able to do that really indicated a lot of her oral and motor planning very early on. That's like weeks old. But realistically now, when I look back, it was probably around like 18 months, 19 months old. And she was a late walker, not really talking at all, not even babbling, not engaging in play at all. And I really started to then question, during the pediatric general pediatric visits, like, is there something I actually can be doing? Can I go see a specialist? And unfortunately, a general pediatrician, even in as wonderful of a, town area I live in, they were like, she's a girl, she's attached to you, she makes eye contact, like, you got to take a deep breath. Like, you had severe postpartum anxiety after your first because you were just such a worrywart. This is probably similar. You're just an extra sensitive. And so I put it on the back burner, and it kept nagging at me. I found out I was pregnant with my son in January of 2018, and my daughter Millie was then, 20 months old, and I began early intervention in New Jersey thinking that it was just a speech delay. I mean, I didn't even know what autism was. I didn't I thought it was the kid that flicked his pen in class, bit on the eraser, had a little bit of a oral, hyperfixation. And when I really got deep into the early intervention of it, all the practitioners that were constantly at my home were telling me, we can't say anything to you, but you really need to get to a developmental pediatrician like immediately. And I was probably a mixture of shell shocked and annoyed, because I thought to myself, like, her dad and I, like, we're high functioning people. Like, this is not like what is so severe about like a speech delay? And so having the ability to, pay out of pocket for like every therapy, I just went balls to the walls with it. I went completely maxed out: music therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, water therapy. Like, something's going to catch here. She's going to switch like tracks, right? And obviously that never happened. And she was so averse to interaction and play-based therapy. She would get, I mean, honestly, almost like hyperventilate or hold her breath and throw up. Um, and I'm talking as simple as like a microfiber towel. Like, if you were like, okay, put the scarf on your head, I mean, that would elicit full on meltdown. And my son was born in October of 2017. And Millie was diagnosed. I'm sorry, to reverse on the timeline. Millie was first diagnosed in 2018, in January of 2018, like by the second opinion. So there was a lot going on when my son was a newborn, and observations and evaluations. And honestly, that's a blur for me. But when I think of the timeline for recognizing his autism, he was about 11 weeks old, and
Mm.
I came down the stairs of my old home, and I looked at my partner, and I said, he's autistic as well. He's starting to do these micro movements when I'm nursing him, and he's gasping for air. Like, there's just something that's not matching up with like these basic like newborn skills. And having a typical daughter, like I started to reference that. I was like, this never happened. She was so efficient with everything. Um, and yeah, so
How did that feel with the second one back to back? Like, what was
guttural.
going through your mind?
Oh, like, this is not my life.
Mm.
Like, I was such in a state of, what I mean, I guess you can cliche call it rock bottom, but it wasn't really rock bottom. It was like, clearly this isn't my reality. Like, this is not happening to me, because I didn't think even practitioners, like doctors that I was my like GP, I shared her with her my thoughts on my son after my daughter got diagnosed, and she said, "You know what, Sarah? I mean, it never happens twice in a family. You're probably just really nervous." And I mean, I was holding him up to the developmental pediatrician follow-up appointments for my daughter, and like literally going like this, like, I'm telling you, there's something that we need to start tracking here. And she said, I will not diagnose a child under 2 years old. And I said, well, he's probably going to be your first. And he was. He was her
Mm.
first patient diagnosed under 2 years old. And that's where my mother's intuitions, like the idea that like we cannot not use mother's intuition as a data point anymore. We have got to use it. It has got to be a blaring data point in terms of diagnoses for children.
Is there a benefit to early diagnosis? Like when you talked about the therapies and the things
Mhm.
that occupational or physical or whatever,
Yeah.
sensory, like I'm trying to wonder, like, is that intuition a good enough signal to sort of, if you get early diagnosis, does it, provide better outcomes? I don't know what
Yeah,
the
yeah, it's a yes and, right? It's a yes and. The yes, of course, in terms of the brain's neuroplasticity under the age of 5 is wildly proven that like you can, wire and rewire and train the younger the child is. I spoke with a mom out in Hawaii who started like an autism mom group I guess over maybe 15 years ago. And she's one of the first people that had her son. She knew he was like severely autistic before 1, and she was entered into a study, and they said you're going to do this is going to require a full year of you doing such intensive therapy, and he is going to be clawing at you, punching you, and but it's going to work, and it did. I mean, she said, I mean, she was completely wounded in battle for that first year because she was holding him down and rewiring the way in which his body was to respond to any sensory stimulation at all. So yes, there is, data to prove that the earlier you intervene with intensive therapy, the better the outcome for typical behaviors or just the ability to be independent. And I believe, and so do most mothers in my situation, believe that, well, there's two people that created my children. It's the sperm of my ex-husband and my egg. I mean, that's the two people that caused my children's autism. And so I think that the looking at the genetics and how those genes might be expressed due to a wide variety of things, including anything put in our body, toxins, the area you live in, the water you drink, the food that you eat, and to say that that doesn't affect the medication, you're on. I mean, that it has to play a part. I mean, to say it doesn't would be to be eliminating the cellular, you know, ability of your body to respond to things then. So if we say that nothing you put in your body is to be looked at as a data point for the genetic expression, then I guess nothing we put in our body matters, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a tough one because I don't know a lot about it, and I feel like a lot of Americans don't know a lot about it, and I think is because there's this certain topic that you're not allowed to even ask about, and so everyone sort of feels like, maybe that's related, but I don't know, maybe it's genetic, and maybe it is epigenetic, and it's some environmental factor that's activating and methylating those gene path. Like I don't know, but it feels like we haven't had an honest conversation, which just cloudies the waters. And like I said, it's very reminiscent to me of the COVID times where you have like this very vocal group that is certain that this thing over here, this intervention is causing it. And then there's this other group that is 100% certain it's not causing it. And how dare you? You're a bad person to even question it. And that leaves the people in the middle kind of ducking for cover. And where I think that what's happening is like a lot of the general population is just kind of like, well, I don't have an autistic kid, and I don't have a
Just
dog
gonna
in this fight. I'm going to watch you two,
Yeah, I
groups
mean,
fight it out.
and that's like what a I mean, what a wonderful place to be in. I mean, I also have choices to make too. I mean, I don't have to go out and buy food at Whole Foods. I love that I can shop at Trader Joe's down the street, and I love that I live in an area that has a Trader Joe's. Like that's fine. I think that the mental load of the choices that we have, if we are told that curiosity in any capacity is wrong, we are doing something horribly dangerous as a society and as a country. Because if people are screaming that they would like to know more, and and then like you say, like each side is saying you're wrong, you're this, and honestly, if you don't have skin in the game, I don't really care to hear what your opinion is on profound autism. I'd love to share with you what I have, but the opinion on it, like what it actually is, and everything from family history to life choices, like to say that it doesn't play a part and that we need to sit down just seems like the opposite of scientific inquiry, right?
As are most things these days. It feels like there's a whole lot of things, whether it's in nutrition or whether it is around certain medical interventions or diet, lifestyle things, or even, sun exposure. Now that seems to be called into question. And it feels like there's this orthodoxy, and you either adhere to the orthodoxy or you're a crazy person. You're like a tinfoil hat, raving lunatic. And I hate that, because I think, to your point, the scientific process, the process of scientific inquiry starts with questioning things. And even things that are well established in the scientific literature are not off limits for the scientific method, right? Like, there's so many things that we thought we knew that get overturned over time. Like, you have to continually question the fact that we can't have an open dialogue about this, or we haven't previously. It feels like now, with RFK coming in, like the doors open a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing is just like, it feels like it's being inflamed now. Like I said, those two sides are just, they're all ramping up. But there's all these news articles against him. He's an insane person, and then, like, it's just the level is going up to like 11 right
It
now. And I don't feel like we're getting what we need, which is, like you said, like a calm, rational, evidence based discourse, and actually have a back and forth and try to come to
Yeah.
some sort of understanding about what's driving this.
I mean, Tom had asked me on the show, he said, what are your thoughts if RFK says he's going to know the cure of autism by September? I don't know if it ended up making it on live, but to be honest, like, I don't even think that this is not about finding an answer. It's about being able to have the conversation that, like, something's going on. Like, can we just talk about that? Because I don't believe that profound non-speaking autism is partisan. But I do believe that if someone mentions profound autism at all in government at all, it's going to peak, it's gonna land on ears of those that are like, "Wow, he mentioned my life." And that is powerful. And I also, I'm finding such humor in the fact that people are, like, attacking him so much. I'm like, he is the son, like, he is the genetic son of one of the most, like, fighters against corruption in this country. That's his son. Like, in your like, I'm telling you, I mean, like, listen, we are all nature, nurture, whatever you want, but, like, that's his son. I don't know if we can, like, talk about that yet, but that, like, constantly makes me laugh when people are like, "He's, spawn of the devil," and, like, he's a, pseudoscientist, and I'm like, "Really?" I mean, I don't know, like, the reason we eat fish in the Hudson now is because of RFK. Like, but that's just
Yeah, people don't seem to remember that, and it's been a very weird juxtaposition or flip-flopping, I think, on, like I said, not a political issue, but I've noticed that there's a lot of issues that used to be traditionally left or traditionally right, where it seems like it's flip-flopped. Where, for example, let's take war, right? Like, it used to be a very, very Republican thing to be pro-war, the neocon thing that was all the rage post 9/11, and the left was traditionally, even going back to the Vietnam War, was anti-war. And you look today, the left is pro-war all day long, and the right has turned anti-war. And then, Bobby Kennedy, like, he was a conservationist. Like, he cleaned up the Hudson. He was very, very, solidly on the left. And then now all of a sudden he's like, alt right mega Nazi. And I'm standing here looking at these things, going like, what in the world is happening? Because like you said, these things should not be. There's a lot of things should just not be partisan issues. Questions of science. But I also get the problem of our institutions really can't be trusted.
well,
We've learned this, and so
that's what yeah.
where are we? Like,
Well,
how
that's
do
I really believe that. I mean, I'm always trying to elevate this conversation of profound autism. Like, it's not partisan at all, but it's a systems problem, right? This goes back to systems drive behaviors, right? So if we're driven by behaviors, if the system is driving behaviors, they want this to happen. They want this swirl to happen. They don't want the curiosity to shake that system that for whoever is profiting off of this, big pharma or, whoever, I find that in the conversations that I am able to have, and I do believe one-on-one like this and on podcasts and has any sort of, listenership, if you can get people to see that they're making healthy choices for themselves that maybe others are not doing, but they don't have the understanding about, that maybe he's not doing something wrong. It just looks so different from what the system has told them to believe. And that's what I keep trying to get down into, um, in all of this, because I don't think, back to your way original question about noticing Mac and Millie's autism and those first signs, the early intervention is was not going to drastically change the outcome of their autism, and that was never the intent of mine, because I do believe that how they see the world is really cool. And I think the desire to have children that go on to be independent should be a human right. I think it should be a human right. That anyone that desires to have a family and children, that you want to have your child grow into the best version of who they are and live an independent life, seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, it feels like that's the baseline that all of us bake into the
Yeah,
equation when we
yeah,
decide to have children.
yeah.
It's like that's like the bottom level. Like my kid grows up,
Like you
moves out, becomes independent, and that's,
and like maybe wants to still hang out with me.
yeah, hopefully.
Maybe. Like maybe like I do a good enough job that my kids still come back to me every so often.
So you mentioned that your kids have a very cool outlook, or way of viewing the world. I can't remember exactly the way you phrased it. And so I'm curious, like, how do you know things? I know you have to know things about your kids being nonverbal. Like, there's a way to communicate. I can't quite conceptualize what that looks like. Can you talk to me about like how you relate to nonverbal kids?
Yes. So it takes listening. It takes a hyper awareness to how to listen and the micro movements of their body and eyes. But I think what I have found that is the best way to learn about why and how they see the world is to get out and to engage with the world. And that is the biggest catch 22 with families like mine, is that the isolation is because it's so hard to get outside to enjoy the world. But if you don't get outside to enjoy the world and try and make strides in their own ability to even live outside the confines of the walls of their home, they will never be able to show and experience the world. So it's this, hamster wheel. My daughter and my son too, but obviously my daughter being my first of my non-speaking autistic children, her awareness to nature in any capacity. Like I'm talking gusts of like a light breeze, gusts of wind, the crunch of the leaves, the feel of moss. Um, I realized that the way in which she was taking in the natural world was so acute, was so specific and acute, and she was fascinated by it, and she still is. I mean, just she's fascinated by any textures and like how I mean, there's this one tree by my parents' home that has like spotted bark on it, and like it changes through the seasons. And I mean, she will sit there, it's almost like she's analyzing the patterns of the bark, or it's the natural world has been my reasoning to know that they definitely see the world and take it in differently. And I wish they could tell me what they're taking in, right? I wish that she could explain to me more why when we go to a playground, they love to play and climb and run on the jungle gym and swing. But as my daughter's gotten older, she's been more specific about um like if like things fall off the tree during the spring, like pollen stuff, and she'll like collect pollen in a corner, and she'll go and find different things of pollen, then she'll stare at it for minutes on end. And so I think for me, what I realize is that like there's something she's seeing in the natural world that is different than what you and I probably are taking in. And not that it's maybe it's one of those things, like it's in front of us and we just we don't slow down enough to think on it. But she is so zoned in on the natural elements of the world. And I believe that that also comes down to the energies of people and humans. She's very aware of people who will receive her as like a just as a kid. She likes reading the same books over and over and over again. She likes doing the same patterns and sticker books and the same beading on, pipe cleaners and letters. But when people show any sort of a genuine interest in joining her, she's like they are safe. There's a safety in that. And so that's also something I'm very aware of. Boys and girls, just like a typical boy and a girl, they are wildly different. And my son is I always say, what is autism and what is him being like a feral 7-year-old little boy? I mean, he is a sled dog. He needs to be run like a freaking baby sled dog to get that energy out. Also, he will run into traffic and think it's funny. That's not, he has no sense of danger. 0.
That's gotta
He
be terrifying as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, I always say the cortisol levels that I've, unfortunately have had to call 911 a number of times, due to an elopement, and I don't mean that to say that he was left by himself for 30 minutes. We're talking like 30 seconds, where you turn around and a door isn't double locked and he's out. He's out the door. So there are events that mirror what I don't wanna ever make the assumption, but I think mirror some sort of intense PTSD, because of the continuation of an event happening with, like, there's nothing's changing, like, I can't change him and teach him not to elope, like, I can't do that. So, harnessing him, but that's in my home, so there's a lot of things that require me to be so hyper vigilant that I'm just one person, right? And so the things that end up happening because I'm just one person end up being ones that spike your cortisol and you feel like should never happen again to anyone on the planet.
That's gotta be so hard. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, again, I'm wondering who you're talking to right now, Brett, because it's sometimes I don't realize it's my own life. Like, I'm like, wait, am I saying this? Like, yeah, I am. Mhm. It's a
No, that's totally understandable that you'd feel that way. I'm still just trying to put myself in your shoes is very uncomfortable, and I can't imagine what you're going through. Um,
Well, I thank you for even trying.
yeah,
Because
it's
that is huge in this whole conversation that I hope is opening up, is that even saying like, "Holy smokes," like, I don't know what that even looks like or feels like, is an acknowledgement, so I appreciate that.
yeah, no worries. Do your children understand the things that you say? Is it like nonverbal goes one way, like they just can't
Mhm.
speak?
Their receptive language is 100%. It
Got
is
it.
100%, and it's because of my ability to take in their communication through, you know, eye glances or, body motions or, any of their stimming. When I say to them, "Hey, Mills, time to get your shoes on for school, let's go." Generally speaking, there's gonna be no response to that, like, no verbal response at all, but no even actionable response to that, and I'll find her in her room, and she's going through her books, and I go, "Sis, the shoes, let's go." She looks up and she's like, I mean, she heard me. She 1000% heard me. She's a 10-year-old little girl who takes in the world differently, but she probably, I mean, she understands what "get your shoes on" means. So there's a it's a really sad and sobering reality, is that she probably wishes she could say, "I'm up here, like, I can't I'll be done in a second," and she can't. So I have to gauge my secondary bid for connection based on her knowing what I said, but unable to reply.
Oh, that's gotta be difficult too. Wow.
Well, I laugh. I mean, again, you have to keep, like, the humor in it, like, she gets her shoes on, then she takes them off, and she'll have a, vocal, like, I call it, like, vocal play, but she'll have, like, things like, "Ah!" Like, that she throws her shoe, and I just talk to her as if I know that she's a 10-year-old little girl too, and I'll say, "Darling, your bus is gonna be here any minute. Like, you gotta keep your shoes on. I know it's freaking annoying, but, like, get your shoes on," and she does this whole thing like, because I think that she knows. She might think that she doesn't want her shoes on, but, like, "Sis, get your shoes on, get your backpack, let's go." But,
Got it. So
but she wears a diaper and she has and, she does not know how to regulate any of her body at all, and she can't ask for water, and she does not know how to get us to ask for having food.
wow, that's a whole other can of worms then. So do you have to always offer? Do the caregivers always have to be like, "Hey, do you want a drink? Do you want something to eat?"
Yeah, I mean, there's again, generalizing children, like, from a school setting to home in any capacity, right? I'm sure you're a father, like, your kids' teachers probably were like, "Gosh, so and so is a wonderful student or wonderful at this," and you're like, who is that child, right? And so I do think that school they get much more of like a structure to their days, and like any kid they come home and they let loose more. So keeping that structure is important, but at the same time the ability to even get them to have any structure takes 1,000 times more practice and input that I mean I just don't I'm as one person there's no I'd have to have like 3 or 4 live-in aides to do that. um, my daughter now can open up the refrigerator and grab her water bottle, so that's been huge, but she doesn't close the refrigerator door, so we have to get like a weighted hinge, to close it because what that's part of the thing. It's like, great, you can get water, gotta close that door though. Um, that I to try to give an example about like the basic needs, I always say it's like we're stuck in the newborn phase, right? Like you're constantly thinking like, okay, when did they eat last? Like when did they last have a bowel movement? When did they last have dairy? Like when did they like you're constantly thinking about that. And it's not bad, but we aren't wired. Again, I go back to like primal things. Like a 40 as a 42-year-old woman, I'm not wired to have a 10-year-old needing me to think about that. And so I wonder like how much input that I have to do consciously to have a default setting be thinking of diapers and wipes at the age my children are at.
Right, right.
Like it's primal.
Yeah, for sure. It's completely counterintuitive to the programming.
Right.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. So, with your kids relating to each other,
Mhm.
I'm very interested in the communication because I know you've seen the studies about the telepathy. Frankly, like that is wild. Like I've seen the studies, and I'm wondering if there is any sort of signs or indications of something like that they've got, like I always call it like The Shining or something, where
Yeah, I mean,
they just have the ability to
I I definitely think my daughter Millie, she's shown signs of that for sure. Without a doubt. There has and I don't know if I can even like it's not a specific example, but she is growing in use of a device. It's called an AAC, an alternative and augmentative communication device. And I mean, it's been 8 years of trying to get her to use it, and there's minimal language to produce on it. But there has been a few times where I have been home, she comes in and will say something on her device that I was just doing at the house.
Mm,
So, again, it hasn't happened a lot, but it's enough to like 2 or 3 times where I've like, "That's interesting. That is" it was so specific. I don't know how she would have known that and how she would have walked in to actually come off a bus, her school bus, walk in the house and say, um, you know, "How was your coffee with oat milk? Did you like the new one you got?" How do you don't even I don't understand. Um, she's made comments about, numbers and dates, like, over and over and over again, where I'd say, "Okay, I understand, like, 222, yeah, February 22nd. Okay, well, I don't know, what is that, Mel's?" Goes on, 222, like, well, and will look at me going like, 222, and I'll say, "I get it." Like, "Okay, I'll look up what 2 means," assuming competence, like, knowing that her receptive language is high. And then the next day, I'll like open a drawer and I'll realize, oh my gosh, I forgot that letter from my grandma who had passed. And it's like February 22nd all over it.
mm.
So there's things like that that maybe are just coincidence. I don't want to ever think that this is like a true science, but once you experience it, it is hard to unsee it. Um, my son, no, I haven't noticed anything of that with him at all. Um, they definitely engage, like, the 2 of them have a very, like, typical sibling dynamic versus how they don't really engage with my oldest at all. Uh, there's that the chasm of development has gotten greater and greater. My 12-and-a-half-year-old's, like, going on 19, and her siblings are 10 and 7 going on, like, 2 and 3. So, it's that gap is wider and wider.
No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want to get a little bit short on time, so I wanted to talk about like your goals here. Like, what are you trying to accomplish through the advocacy and the public presence here? Like, what are you trying to? What kind of change are you trying to affect?
I think one, having the general public and any sort of any sort of light illuminating on the realities of mothers and caregivers like myself, because institutionalization of these children should never happen again. Yet, by keeping them in home and not acknowledging the weight of that work on the parents and caregivers, we need to sort of we need to recalibrate what that looks like in terms of uh, the load on mothers and caregivers, and what that looks like, especially as they age up. You know, right now, that they're younger, but I know of friends who, children are 18, 19, 20, and they age out of the system. So I don't know whether that what that's going to look like. I do hope that mothers and caregivers are given a much greater platform to speak about their realities. To what extent that changes anything, I'm not sure. And I do really, really, really ask for scientific studies done on the genetics and epigenetics, because even within my own family, um, and I've got scientists and people that are, as left as the day is long, who don't eat processed foods in our country, that only buy American wheat. Like, so we have to start talking about these things that we for generations have lived, and how that has changed, um, our genome, for sure. Those are the big two things, and really staying open, because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm pretty sure that in my life, there's not going to be a wave of change. Like, we're not going to, my children aren't going to miraculously talk based on any one thing that's discovered. But I think that the course correction that we can have in having these conversations about really doing the actual, like, scientific discovery on the epigenetic factor has to be looked at from both sides. And if we don't, families like mine are just going to stay insular and, grin and bear it and bootstraps, which, okay, the American way, but at some point, like, they're going to have a lot of broken families, and, that happens.
Yeah, certainly. And so, do you have any sort of understanding of the state of research into autism? Because I don't. I don't know what's being done. Are we even looking at this? I just don't hear a lot about studies that are going on investigating anything. And like I said, I suspect it's because of the topic that you can't discuss.
Yeah.
So I just, maybe if you could, tell me of anything you know about.
Yeah, there was I was talking about this with a woman. I've recently got sort of in touch and collaborating with the president of the National Council of Severe Autism. And from what I gather is that there is going to be more, um, like, funding for deep research on this from a more non, bureaucratic pharma sponsored way. And it's also going to take a long time, and they also want to have this start immediately. So I'm drawing a blank on the name of the study. I just saw it yesterday, and there's, like, the researchers are supposed to put in their submit their proposal for to be selected by June 6th, which was, like, insane to me. I was like, these I'm not in the scientific research field, but, like, that to me seems really, like, short. But I applauded that, like, they're trying to do this. So there really isn't a lot of independent research. I've been talking to a gentleman out of the Stanford School of Medicine, who has said he has clawed for years to get funding for his research on this, and it has fallen short. Like, it's the I can only imagine his exhaustion in even just trying to get funding for even a small study. So I do think that, again, maybe there's just more independent funding on this. But it's non-existent right now, and I don't mean to downplay the studies that have been done, but we need to remove any coercion or any sort of payouts that are going to anyone that's going to benefit from this.
Yeah, good luck with that though. The way the whole structure is set up, it's pretty gross if you look into it. It doesn't matter what field you're, whether it's for nutrition science or anytime there's a moneyed interest,
Yeah.
it ends up being very gross. And so the reason I'm asking is that you hear Kennedy talking about, like, oh, we're gonna have this thing, figured out by, and so I'm like, what is up with that language? Like,
Yeah,
do
I
you,
don't
do you
know.
know what to
I have to
make
be
with
honest. I
that?
mean, I don't know. I think that, his statement in April was so messy, and it obviously was, like, inflammable. Like, sure, it was in flames, literally, from the second he opened his mouth. And at the same time, I my hope is that whatever happens in September, whatever he announces in September, whatever he thinks he says he found, maybe the whole reason he does that is that it's going to continue to put other voices like mine back on to this institutionalized media disaster that we have, and at least allow for those voices to continue to rise. Like, maybe there's no answer, but at least we're talking about it. That's what I feel. I don't think that there's anything that's going to actually come from that immediately. And if there is, it would be to me like buying the, Thigh Master or something. It's not gonna whatever's gonna be told is like, okay, well, talk to Suzanne Summers then, because you know,
Yeah, I get that, and I this is what I worry about, is I worry that he has oh, I got it figured out, and we're going to say we're going to give our findings, and we're going to tell the world what it, and what I fear happens is that it further entrenches people, and it pushes people away instead of bringing people together to have the conversation. That scares me, and I hate this world that we're getting into, where, like I said, things become politicized, and then it's like, well, this is a bad person, so I have to be on the opposite side, and then we're not talking, we're not communicating, we're not doing good science, and people like you continue to suffer, which is something that I think people don't oftentimes consider when they're making their political points and being on a team and do like that. That stuff really irks me because it hurts real people in real ways.
that's the thing is, we have all these platitudes about like, well, what about this disenfranchised group and what about that? It's interesting to me that there are millions of families like mine, and and again, I always say like that one of my favorite like theories is John Boyd, who was the developer of the OODA loop, and I mean he's a aviation fighter pilot, but he talks about, we have to destroy and create. Like, we have to continue to destroy and create, and we have to interact and not isolate. And those, I mean, that's dumbing down a lot of his theories and papers, but it's just the truth. Like, we have to start destroying what has worked on in any way for whether it's non-speaking autism, whether it's for medicinal curing of any sort of pathogen. I mean, there's no reason not to, but it does not settle with the majority of people, because why would they?
Yeah,
I'll tell you
exactly.
what, if they came and lived in my house for a month and I was like, someone said to me, "Oh my gosh, I totally take care of your babies for a month." And they're like, "But I have got 5 kids and I'm in the Midwest." I'm like, "That sounds like freaking Bali to me." I'm like, 5 typical kids that go to school and like they're ranging. I'm like, "That sounds awesome." I'm like, "Where's your local diner? Let's go." Like, you know?
Yeah, and maybe honestly, and it sounds trite, but like maybe like a reality show, not with you necessarily, but let's show the other side, right? Like let's not show the quirky side, the high functioning side, but maybe the world just
That's
needs to
true.
have a peek into the life, man, the day to life.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not volunteering myself for that, but I do. But again, but I think that people are trying to do that. Like, these mothers online are trying to do that, and they get cursed. They get cursed. So, to be continued.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well,
Yes.
hey, this is a great place to leave it, and man, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was kind of hit me in my feels, and
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go
no,
there.
no, 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 it's fine. I just, I found myself empathizing and putting myself in your shoes, and I was just like a little bit aghast at what that weight, just me doing the mental exercise, which doesn't even approximate what the actual reality of it is.
Yeah.
And so, just kudos for continuing to sort of show up every day for your kids like that. Even that action alone, I think sometimes people forget what a heroic thing that is. So just kudos to you, and thanks for everything you're doing. Thanks for raising awareness. This is a fantastic conversation. I really
Awesome.
enjoyed
I
it.
really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Brett.
Yep. So tell people where to find you.
Yeah, so I can be found on Substack is my main social media presence. Inchstones at Substack is my tagline, my trademark term, and on Instagram, Inchstones by Saturday Story. Saturday Story is my company, my LLC, sort of the umbrella of my original writings from back in the day. But yeah, Inchstones by Saturday Story is where you can find me on every platform.
Perfect. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll chat
Thank
later.
you. All right, thanks so much.